I am continuing my reading, and what I am doing in this series is I am reading through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am reading in a chronological order of events, not according to publication or volume, so I will be jumping around a little bit as I move along. In this video, I will be reading chapter 42 of Job. This is the last chapter. This is the epilogue of the play of Job. And I want to, before I read, I do want to talk about this one last time, that Job is a literary work. It is an epic poem written to be performed as a play in front of an audience. And we can see several things to indicate this, as I pointed out in the first few chapters. You can see the stage directions. There are a number of places throughout it that I'm reading it and I'm saying, this is the stage directions. This is put in here so that the actors know what to do. Like when Elihu tells Job to shut up and not talk, you can see the author saying, okay, this is where Job is supposed to try and talk, and Elihu shuts him down. But it's also at the beginning of most chapters, you have the very brief, very short verses that identify who is speaking. And this is the cue. This is written in, okay, now this person speaks. So Elihu also preceded and said. So we have these monologues, and sometimes the monologues are split up, and we have like 2 chapters. Well, we have like Job had like 3 chapters that was just Job. The first chapter said Job spoke. The second chapter did not have that little stage direction, but the third chapter says, and Job continued his parable. That is an indication from the author saying, okay, there is a pause here. We stop and we let things kind of set for the audience before Job continues speaking. And we see all of these stage directions going on. And when it says God spoke to Job out of a whirlwind, when God first starts speaking back in chapter 38, this is reminiscent of the fact that in ancient theater, you weren't supposed to actually show the gods. They were off stage, and they spoke from off stage, or they had what was, I can't remember what it's called. It was it was the original catwalk. It was up above. But that's where you would put the people. The gods would stand up there. The people speaking for the gods would stand up there, and they would be hidden from the audience, and they would speak down to the people. So the voice would appear to be coming from the heavens. And so that whole thing that God speaks out of the whirlwind, this is a stage direction saying we don't see God. When God is speaking, we don't see him. We just portray a whirlwind on stage to hide God. And the actor that speaks for God speaks through, his voice will come through this whirlwind. All of this is showing us that this is a play, that this was written as a literary work. So let us get into this last chapter. This is the epilogue. Remember, the first 2 chapters were the prologue, set up the story, set up the events, the main event. The main event being the monologues or the dialogues between Job and his friends, because that's how ancient plays worked. You had a brief prologue that kind of set things up, and then you had the monologues and dialogues where the actors would stand on stage and give their speeches back and forth. Now we get to the epilogue where the story's over, and now we wrap things up. So, chapter 42. Job repents in dust and ashes. He sees the Lord with his eyes. The Lord chastises Job's friends and accepts him and blesses him and makes his latter end greater than his beginning. Okay. Then Job answered the Lord and said, I know that thou canst do everything, and that no thought can be withholden from thee. Who is he that hideth counsel without knowledge? Therefore have I uttered that I understood not, things too wonderful for me, which I knew not. Hear, I beseech thee, and I will speak. I will demand of thee, and declare thou unto me. I have heard of thee by the hearing of my ear, but now mine eye seeth thee. Wherefore I abhor myself, and repent in dust and ashes. So, I think I mentioned earlier that it appeared from what Job had said that he had seen God before, but apparently from this, it was he had heard God, but now he is seeing him. This could also just be a reference to this one time. So I have heard thee by the hearing of the ear, meaning I've just listened to you, and now I can see you. Now you're making yourself visible to me. And so, okay. Verse 7. And it was so that after the Lord had spoken these words unto Job, the Lord said to Eliphaz the Temanite, My wrath is kindled against thee, and against thy two friends, for ye have not spoken of me the thing that is right, as my servant Job hath. Therefore take unto you now 7 bullocks and 7 rams, and go to my servant Job, and offer up for yourselves a burnt offering. And my servant Job shall pray for you. For him will I accept, lest I deal with you after your folly, in that ye have not spoken of me the thing which is right, like my servant Job. So Eliphaz the Temanite, and Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Taamathite went and did according as the Lord commanded them, and the Lord also accepted Job. Now, you'll note here that God does not include Elihu in this reproach of these 3 men. Elihu just seems to be kind of forgotten now. He kind of appears on the scene. He's not introduced in the prologue like the other guys are. He's just there, and then he disappears once he gives his spiel. But God is upset because these 3 men were, in essence, they were preaching what we call today a prosperity gospel. That if you're righteous, you'll be preserved, and if you are suffering, then it is evidence that you have sinned, and you just got to repent, and you will no longer suffer. And God is saying, look, you guys, you didn't do right. You didn't speak right. And Job, even though I chastised him, he has repented, and I will accept him because he is a good guy. He just had a few faults that we needed to straighten out. And now you need to get him to pray for you, or I'm going to reject you. And so if you want me to accept you, this is what you got to do. And they went and it does show that it gives them credit that they do go and do it. They don't get upset. They accept the chastisement of God, and we're all good. So here we go. The final part. Verse 10. And the Lord turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. Also the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Then came there unto him all his brethren, and all his sisters, and all they that had been of his acquaintance before, and did eat bread with him in his house. And they bemoaned him, and comforted him over all the evil that the Lord had brought upon him. Every man also gave him a piece of money, and every one an earring of gold. So the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than his beginning. For he had 14,000 sheep, and 6,000 camels, and 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 she-asses. He had also 7 sons and 3 daughters. And he called the name of the first Jemimah, and the name of the second Keziah, and the name of the third Karen Hapuk. And in all the land were no women found so fair as the daughters of Job, and their father gave them inheritance among their brethren. After this lived Job 140 years, and saw his sons and his sons' sons, even 4 generations. So Job died, being old and full of days. Now that is a good ending. Now I do have to point out just a couple of small details here. It says Job got twice what he had before. But then we read, of course, he had, in the start, he had 7 sons and 3 daughters. And then in the end, he gets 7 more sons and 3 more daughters. But it states that he had twice what he had in the beginning. And all the animals do double. So why aren't the children doubled? This is an indication that these people understood that families are eternal. Even though his 10 older children are dead, they are still his children. So in getting 10 more children, they didn't replace the first 10. They were added to them, and he now has 20 children that are his throughout eternity. But I also like that Job has gone through a couple of weeks at least of this horrible physical pain and suffering. And when it's all over, all of his friends and all of his family come back to him. Nobody wanted to hang out with him before. He didn't smell good because of all the skin problems he was having. It just wasn't, nobody wanted to be around him. He had bemoaned that earlier in the book. Now they all come. He is restored. He is no longer suffering those ailments, and the people are willing to come and hang out with him again. And at first you think, oh, well, they're the fair weather friends. He's cured now, so they're coming back. But two things to note. First, they didn't just come and say, oh, hey, you're better now, we can hang out again. They all brought money. Money and jewelry, stuff that he could sell. These people were also repenting. They realized they had treated Job badly, and they came with gifts to say, we are sorry. Second thing to note, there is no indication that Job had any animosity towards any of them. He welcomed them all back into his life with open arms. He never complained. He never got angry at them. He never questioned them. He never said, oh, you weren't here when I was suffering. Why do I want you here now? No. He said, yes, come back. You are my friends. You are my family. I want you here. Forget the past. Job is a great example for all of us.